The view is from the U.S. National Bank building in Galveston, and the city is Galveston itself, its port and its beach. The city and the bank building have been major foci of Kempner family history for over 100 years. But when I look out beyond the city to the horizon of the Gulf, I see beckoning to future Kempner family generations the same kind of call that brought the original Harris Kempner to the New World from Poland 160 years ago. Harris Kempner from Poland and Eliza Seinsheimer from Cincinnati, Ohio, should be considered the progenitors of the American branch of the Kempner family, a family which over its now 5 adult generations has lived lives of active service rooted in a heritage of social concerns and devotion to family, caring deeply for future generations, and seeking to help the larger society meet the challenges and opportunities of their ever-changing world. This piece will explore some of the reasons why we have done so and how.
Harris and Eliza shared 2 strong traditions. The Hebrew tradition of devotion to God, family, and ethical living, which Harris Kempner brought from Russian-occupied Poland, and Eliza Seinsheimer's parents brought from Germany. As important, Harris and Eliza were steeped in the broader European liberal culture of the early 19th century, emphasizing religious and secular freedom, education, and the application of work and reason to achieve success. The New World offered the opportunity to freely combine these 2 traditions, Judaism and liberalism. When transported to the United States, the 2 traditions blossomed into American Reform Judaism, which not only embraced democratic ideals, but in the words of one of its founders, Isaac Mayer Wise, made America the hope of the world. The world is our country, and humanity is our politics. Cosmopolitanism is the highest object of humanity. We love this country's institutions because they approach nearest to the principles of absolute justice. Eliza's family and Harris were among the first wave of immigrant Jews to experience the exhilaration of what scholar Jonathan S. Wucher calls civil Judaism, explaining that is the expression of a profound Jewish religious sensibility, a passionate commitment to the survival of Jews, Judaism, and the moral values of the Jewish tradition. This is an important link from Old World to New, as Reform Judaism superimposed assimilation and acculturation in this country, which resulted in the Americanization of both Harris and Eliza. Harris explained what that meant to him.
I came to America to be an American, and I tried to adapt my ways to American ways. I was young, and the right to participate in all phases of American life, political, social, economic, even military, was wonderful to me.
When Harris met Eliza in New York City at the communal dining table of a boarding house or a small hotel, the 2 shared more than just a hearty appetite. Eliza had learned her Torah and Talmud and had sung in the choir at the Temple of Isaac Mayer Wise, founder of Hebrew Union College in her hometown of Cincinnati, and organizer of the Union of American Hebrew Congregations. Harris had joined the growing Jewish community in Galveston, which was composed of the city's commercial elite who had developed Reform practices, formed the state's earliest temple, B'nai Israel, and had been assimilated into the broader society and taken active roles in civic, patriotic, and philanthropic endeavors. Harris and Eliza adhered to the teaching that work brings joy when done in service of others, and its rewards shared, obeying the stricture that from whom much is given, much is expected. That principle became the basis of Harris's business success, and motive force behind Eliza's insistence that as the widow, survivor, and community, she determined to hold the estate together as tightly as she would hold her family together, so that all of her children would share equally in her late husband's estate.
Careful businessman that he was, Harris actually left no signed will. So the widow's decision to treat everyone equally in terms of the family assets was exceptionally important. Her generosity of spirit has marked family interactions ever since. We have come to expect to be treated fairly and equally by both our elders and our peers in both financial and social matters. And this has enabled cooperation rather than competition to be the hallmark of family interactions for over 120 years.
Upon Harris's death in 1894, eldest son Ike took over the reins of an expanding network of railroads, banks, land investments, directorships of local and regional ventures, and the cotton factoring and exporting business Harris had nurtured as the backbone of H. Kempner. Upon graduation from the University of Virginia a few years later, and taking his year abroad as Ike had been advised to do, and subsequent Kempners have done, second son Dan came home to back Ike up in every way asked, often tackling the most difficult negotiations, handling real estate transactions, and keeping up H. Kempner's correspondence with his sisters and brothers-in-law, Hattie and Henry Oppenheimer in San Antonio, Sarah and David Weston in Cincinnati, and relatives abroad. Third son Robert Lee fit perfectly into the banking side of Kempner Enterprises. The elder bachelor Lee was called upon on numerous occasions to escort his mother and sisters, as the family enjoyed an active social life, which included travel in late summer. Stanley, whom all called Pat, was Peck's bad boy, the apple of his mother's eye, the fun-loving younger son who found greatest pleasure in hunting and fishing with companions at the Kempner camp down the island. He made a business niche for himself in successfully growing Texas Prudential Insurance Company. Above all else, Kempner family members have served their country in war and peace, celebrated life, and shared their blessings with each other and the community. Examples abound. These are only a few. Although Harris opposed slavery, he fought valiantly for the Confederacy beside his fellow citizens who believed they had the democratic right to form their own government. Each succeeding generations of sons have donned uniforms. Lee and Pat in World War I, Harris Kempner, Herb, Harris Weston in World War II, and virtually all of the fourth generation, including Tim and Shrub, were swept up in the Cold War draft. And the youngest of that generation, Sandy Kempner, volunteered service in Vietnam, forfeiting his life in 1966 for that same right that Harris Kempner had risked his in the American Civil War, the right of free citizens to form their own government. Throughout the family's recorded history, public service has seemed an imperative. Harris served on the Deepwater Commission. Ike became the Galveston City Treasurer in 1899, oversaw the financial recovery of the city after the 1900 storm, and was the chief architect of the city's commission form of government, serving as Commissioner of Finance and Revenue from 1901 to 1916, and mayor from 1917 to 1919. Lee served as city treasurer for 30 years. Harris served on a number of city boards, as did Shrub. Robert Lynch served on Galveston City Council. Kempner men helped Kempner women gain the right to vote in 1919. The women readily expanded their volunteer activities to include civic involvement.
The Kempner women through the generations have conspicuously sought to make this world a better place. Henny became the second woman to serve on the Galveston School Board, preceded by Noni's mother-in-law, Mrs. James Thompson, and followed by Fanny Adu. Henny's most notable contribution was to the American Red Cross, serving almost 50 years as chairman of volunteers. Gladys served beside her, as did Frances Adu Lynch, who also presided over the Junior League. Dan's wife, Jean Burdick Kempner, assumed state and local leadership of the League of Women Voters and then in World War II of the American Women's Volunteer Service. Noni Thompson and Ruth Levy Kempner began their volunteer service early and wholeheartedly, even while raising families, chairing numerous committees and campaigns from Red Cross, Community Chest, Public Health, UTMB, the Grand, the Library, and many more. Ruth out-Kempnered the Kempners when she led the successful campaign to change Galveston's city government from Ike's commission form of government to the more popular city council form, and then became the first woman ever elected to serve on the city's governing body in 1961.
Continuing the tradition, Lyda Ann Quinn Thomas was elected to serve on the council for 3 terms, and then was elected mayor for 3 terms, during which she was forced to deal with Hurricane Rita in 2005, and then the devastating hurricane of 2008. Ironically called Ike. Over all generations, Kempners have contributed their time, talents, and money, supporting what they believe in and social values they cherish. Ike followed his father and mother in providing fair treatment for blacks, and Harris led the movement in Galveston for improved housing and for peaceful integration. Closest to her heart, Eliza kept her family together in celebration and service. Every Friday night after temple, the family would gather at Eliza's dining table. The lessons learned at table ran the gamut from etiquette to world affairs, always with servings of humor and good-hearted gossip. As the family grew and more voices clamored to be heard, family members acquired the ability to talk, eat, and not listen all at the same time. After Ike and Henny were married, they established a weekday lunch and Saturday night family dinner custom. Lyda Kempner Quinn remembered that every other Sunday we went back to Granny's, and that helped the help situation and our food budget. Holidays were spoken for as well, the IHKs on Christmas, the Dan Ks on Thanksgiving. None of the family ever developed a serious weight problem, which is surprising considering the importance they placed on gatherings to break bread, and the obvious pleasure Eliza took in fondly chiding Ike at the other end of the table. "Now, Ike, give everybody enough." Strikingly, Kempners have been builders. Harris built a commercial and financial conglomerate. Eliza became the major benefactress for the temple, providing for the community house, funds for the present temple, and for Rabbi Cohen's rabbinage. Ike became a city builder, helping rebuild Galveston after the 1900 storm. Lesser known was his leadership role in promoting Galveston as a progressive city that would attract new business and tourism. He was the driving force, along with Dan and Bertrand Adu, funding the construction and management of the Galvez Hotel, which opened in 1911 to be the grand dame of the seawall. To anchor the downtown business district, Ike and his brothers, with Dan supervising, hired noted architect Alfred C. Bossum to design and build the United States National Bank Building, 1923 through 25, the city's most elegant skyscraper for the next 50 years. Isaac Herbert Jr. devoted his tragically limited career to converting Sugar Land from what had been called the hellhole of the Brazos, worked by convict labor, to a model company town, with the further intended purpose of modernizing plant, equipment, and housing for all workers, enabling them to become homeowners, and the community to become incorporated and one of the most prosperous in the region. C.C. Kempner built a successful career as a buyer for Lord & Taylor, while sister Lida Quinn owned and operated A.W. Quinn Distributing and found time to head the Red Cross in the 1980s. Pat became a practitioner of adaptive reuse, purchasing the Garten Verein and giving it to the city to be used as a public park, Kempner Park, in honor of his parents. As president of Texas Prudential Insurance Company, he purchased the historic Ball High School building and turned it into a modern office building. Hattie joined with her Oppenheimer relatives in supporting the building and beautification of their San Antonio synagogue, as did Sarah and her Cincinnati congregation. Their children continued that tradition of giving in honor of their parents, and the fourth generation has followed suit. Penny Quinn Gutterson and Michael have purchased the historic Dan Kempner home from cousin Dan Thorne, renovating it and keeping it in the family. Sarah gave land overlooking the Ohio River so that citizens could enjoy a park with a view. Fanny Kempner Adu gave Galveston a park in memory of her husband Lewis. Barbara Weston Sasser and her husband Dominic gave a large parcel of land to the city of Galveston for soccer fields called Sandhill Crane Park. Shortly before Eliza died in 1947, the children established the Galveston Fund, which after her death became the Harris and Eliza Kempner Fund, to ensure that in bad times as well as good, the habit of charity so deeply ingrained in the family psyche by their parents would be perpetuated, and future generations of Kempners would be able to continue to share their blessings when others needed them most. The original benefactors of the Kempner Fund not only gave to it in their lifetime, but set aside generous bequests in their wills. They and those who have followed have endowed scholarships, chairs, whole departments, and buildings to such institutions as the University of Texas Medical Branch, Texas A&M, Hebrew Union College, and Harvard. The fund also supports local charities, the cultural arts, and provides startup money for nonprofit organizations. It makes loans for project-related investments. Throughout the decade of the 1950s, the Kempner enterprises were celebrated and recognized nationally for having achieved over 50 years of shared growth and an undivided estate. But seemingly at the pinnacle of family success and solidarity, its heart and very core was being shattered by the deaths of Herb, then Pat, then Dan, with Hattie soon to follow, all in that decade. Those deaths, combined with Ike's debilitating illness and operations, left significant gaps in the leadership of H. Kempner, Imperial Sugar Enterprises, and at Prudential. Coupled with the avalanche of estate, gift, and income taxes, the family was forced to restructure its holdings for greater liquidity and also to meet the needs of its rapidly increasing family members. The business or businesses have evolved from an estate to a Massachusetts trust in 1920, to H. Kempner Enterprises, unincorporated, to H. Kempner with Imperial Sugar, Sugarland Industries, Sugarland Telephone, and Sugarland State Bank split off to what is now a liquidating H. Kempner Trust. Shrub, president of Kempner Capital Management, a new money management entity he created, has tried to take on the mantle of his father, working with Denny and Jim, who followed in their father's footsteps at Sugarland. The three cousins, assisted by Robert Lynch, are marshaling the complicated task of dismantling the Kempner Trust. Meanwhile, the Kempner Fund, presently chaired by Robert Lynch, has grown from a $38,000 corpus to over $40 million.
The various H. Kempner companies have kept the family together through shared financial interest. The Kempner Fund has the potential of keeping the family together through shared philanthropic interests. Peaches, Lida Ann, and Barbara Sassa are lifetime members and will help see to that.
Members of the fourth generation are now the senior members of the clan. Many are old enough to remember Eliza's admonitions to love and respect one another and to share. Having reaped the blessings their parents and grandparents bestowed on them, they have given back in full measure, several forging new vistas reflecting global involvement and concern. Ann Oppenheimer Hamilton serving at the World Bank. Dr. Peter Thompson and wife Nancy volunteering medical and health care in Guatemala each summer. Rhoda Thompson-Ezel embedded in the computer high-tech world. Robert Lynch presiding over the Galveston Historical Foundation and venturing into the wine industry in France. Dan Thorne continuing his mother Mary Jean's cosmopolitan one world interests and pursuits at home and abroad. Barbara Sasser exploring and filming her mother Alice's father, Alex Frieder, and his brother's historic role in opening the Philippines to 1,200 Jewish refugees from Hitler's persecution in the late 30s and early 40s. Now a documentary seen on PBS. Denny and Jim contributing to Houston's world-renowned artistic and cultural milieu. Shrub serving on the National Executive Committee of the American Jewish Committee, American Jewry's major world voice for Jewish solidarity, survival of Israel, and diplomatic defense of human rights around the world.
The fifth and sixth Kempner family generations mount the stage at a time in history when progress needs to be matched with principle, when the values this family was founded on hopefully will prevail. Judging from the education, travels, and work experiences of the fifth and sixth generations, and their growing emphasis on solving worldwide problems as indicated by their choice of recipients for Kempner Fund matching gifts, there's considerable assurance that the ever-expanding Kempner family will continue to build a better world based on our own bedrock. Now, Kempner beneficiaries may start afresh as young Harris Kempner did 160 years ago, only more richly endowed, not only in worldly possessions and the world at your doorstep, but with kinship and friendship. Cousins by the Dozens fellowship that promises to bring you back to Galveston, and to paraphrase Robert Penn Warren, to make it a place to come home to.